My wife's parents insisted on prenup when I had no money. Now that I'm worth more than them, they're demanding I tear it up and threatening grandparents' rights if I refuse. I, 34M, have been married to Sarah, 32F, for 6 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter named Emma. This whole situation started long before our marriage, but it came to a head last month in a way I never expected. Sarah comes from money. Her mother Patricia, 58F, owns 3 successful dental clinics across the city, and her father Robert, 61M, runs a property management company that handles commercial real estate. They live in a gated community and drive luxury cars. My background is different. My dad worked as a mechanic for 30 years before retiring, and my mom was a school secretary. We lived comfortably but nowhere near their level. I met Sarah 7 years ago when she was working as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup. I was doing freelance web development after dropping out of my computer science degree in my final year. The decision to leave university wasn't easy, but I had already started getting clients and saw more potential in building my own business than finishing school. From our first date, Sarah and I clicked. She understood my vision for starting a web development agency. When we moved in together after 8 months, I was still building my client base and working from our apartment. Sarah had a steady salary and covered most of our rent and groceries during those early months. I contributed what I could, but she definitely carried more of the financial load. The problems with her parents started immediately. The first time Sarah brought me to their house for dinner, Patricia spent the entire evening asking about my education and career plans. When I explained that I had left university to focus on my business, she exchanged a look with Robert that I pretended not to notice. Throughout the meal, they kept making comments about the importance of financial stability and having backup plans. Over the next 2 years, their behavior became more obvious. They would make jokes about me being Sarah's dependent. During family gatherings, Patricia would introduce me to other relatives by mentioning that I worked from home while Sarah had a real job. Robert would ask if I was still playing around with websites or if I had considered going back to school. The worst incident happened during Sarah's birthday dinner at an expensive restaurant. Patricia had invited several family friends, including a successful lawyer who was single. She spent the entire evening praising this man's accomplishments and asking Sarah detailed questions about her own career goals. When the lawyer asked what I did, Patricia jumped in before I could answer and said I was trying to figure things out. Sarah grabbed my hand under the table, but I could see she was embarrassed. Despite their treatment, Sarah always supported my business. She would stay up late helping me organize client files and celebrated every new contract I landed. When I proposed after 3 years together, she said yes immediately. We started planning a small wedding for the following spring. 2 months before the wedding, Patricia and Robert asked to meet with me privately. They came to our apartment on a Saturday morning while Sarah was at her yoga class. Patricia sat on our couch and pulled out a folder of legal documents. She explained that they wanted me to sign a prenuptial agreement. The terms were straightforward. If Sarah and I divorced, we would each keep whatever assets we brought into the marriage and whatever we earned during the marriage. There would be no alimony or shared property. Additionally, if we divorced, I would need to repay Sarah and her family for any financial support they provided while I was building my business. Robert added that this was just a precaution to protect everyone involved. He said they had nothing against me personally, but they wanted to make sure their daughter would be secure no matter what happened. Patricia mentioned that the prenup also protected my future assets from Sarah, though she said this with a tone that suggested she didn't expect me to have significant assets to protect. I asked if Sarah knew about this meeting. They said they would discuss it with her later, but they wanted to gauge my reaction first. I told them I would need time to think about it and speak with Sarah. That evening, I showed Sarah the prenup documents. She read through them twice before putting them down on the kitchen table. She said her parents had mentioned wanting some kind of agreement but hadn't given her the details. We talked for hours about what this meant and whether it was worth fighting. Sarah pointed out that the prenup was actually fair in its language, even if the timing and approach were insulting. She said if I built a successful business, the agreement would protect that too. We both knew her parents were hoping I would never have anything worth protecting, but the legal language didn't reflect their assumptions. After a week of discussions, we decided to sign it. Sarah wanted to avoid a huge family fight right before our wedding. I agreed because I was confident in my business prospects and didn't want to give her parents more ammunition to use against me. The prenup signing happened at Patricia and Robert's lawyer's office. They were both there, along with Sarah and me. The lawyer explained each section, and we all signed the documents. Patricia seemed satisfied in a way that bothered me, but I focused on the fact that Sarah and I were getting married in 6 weeks. Our wedding was small but perfect. Patricia and Robert paid for the reception, which they reminded us about several times during the planning process. They invited twice as many people as Sarah and I did, mostly their business associates and country club friends. During his speech, Robert mentioned how proud he was of Sarah for finding someone who made her happy, but he also talked extensively about the importance of practical decision-making in marriage. After the wedding, my business started growing faster. I landed a contract with a regional restaurant chain to redesign their websites and online ordering systems. This led to referrals to other restaurants and eventually to hotels and retail stores. Sarah got a promotion at her company and started earning more as well. Patricia and Robert's attitude toward me didn't improve with my business success. They still made comments about my lack of formal education and questioned whether my income was sustainable. When Sarah and I bought our first house 3 years ago, Patricia asked if we were sure we could afford the mortgage payments. When Emma was born 2 years later, Robert suggested that I might need to get a regular job to support a family. Last year, my business exploded. The restaurant chain I had been working with decided to expand nationally and hired my agency to handle all their digital marketing and web development. This single contract tripled my annual revenue. I hired 4 employees and moved into a proper office space. I also started getting contracts from other national chains who had seen my work. By the end of last year, my business was worth more than Patricia's dental clinics and Robert's property management company combined. Sarah and I bought a larger house in a better neighborhood. We started contributing more to Emma's college fund and began planning for a second child. 3 weeks ago, Patricia and Robert came over for Sunday dinner. After Emma went to bed, they asked Sarah and me to sit down because they wanted to discuss something important. Patricia started by saying they had been thinking about our prenuptial agreement. She explained that it had been necessary when we were younger and less established, but now that we had Emma and had been married for several years, it might be time to dissolve it. She said the agreement was creating an artificial barrier in our family and wasn't reflecting the reality of our partnership. Robert added that successful marriages require trust and that keeping the prenup in place might suggest that Sarah and I didn't have complete faith in our relationship. He said they had watched us build a strong marriage and felt comfortable recommending that we tear up the agreement. I looked at Sarah, who seemed as surprised as I was by this conversation. I told Patricia and Robert that I was comfortable with the prenup remaining in place. I said it had served its purpose of giving them peace of mind, and I saw no reason to change something that was working. Patricia's expression changed immediately. She said they weren't making a suggestion but giving us advice as Sarah's parents and Emma's grandparents. She said that dissolving the prenup would demonstrate my commitment to the family and my confidence in our marriage. I replied that I was confident in our marriage, which was exactly why I didn't need to change our legal arrangements to prove anything. I pointed out that they had insisted on the prenup because it would protect everyone involved, and that protection still made sense. Robert raised his voice and said I was being stubborn and disrespectful. He said they had supported Sarah and me financially during our early years, and the least I could do was listen to their guidance now. He accused me of being suspicious and paranoid about their motives. This is where I made my mistake. I told them that I understood their motives perfectly well. I said they had wanted the prenup when they thought Sarah would always be wealthier than me, and now they wanted it gone because the situation had reversed. I said they were the ones being paranoid about protecting assets, except now they were worried about protecting Sarah's potential claim to my assets instead of protecting their money from me. Patricia stood up and started yelling. She said I was ungrateful and had no respect for everything they had done for Sarah and me. She said they had welcomed me into their family despite their reservations, and this was how I repaid their generosity. Sarah tried to calm everyone down, but the argument continued for another 20 minutes. Robert accused me of brainwashing Sarah against her own parents. Patricia said I had always been selfish and that she should have trusted her instincts about me from the beginning. Finally, I asked them to leave because their yelling was going to wake Emma. This made them even angrier. Patricia told Sarah that she needed to decide whether she was going to let her husband disrespect her parents in her own home. Sarah walked them to the door and said we would talk when everyone had cooled down. That was 3 weeks ago. Patricia has been calling and texting Sarah every day since then. The messages started with apologies for losing their tempers, but quickly shifted to renewed pressure about the prenup. Yesterday, Sarah showed me a text from Patricia saying that keeping the prenup in place proved I was planning to divorce Sarah and take everything I had earned. Sarah has tried to explain to her parents that I built my business through my own work and that the prenup doesn't change anything about our commitment to each other. They aren't listening. Robert sent Sarah a long email yesterday explaining that successful families share everything and that my insistence on keeping separate assets was selfish and un-American. I don't know what to do next. Sarah is caught in the middle, and I can see the stress affecting her. She loves her parents despite their flaws, and she wants everyone to get along. But I'm not willing to dissolve the prenup just to satisfy people who have never respected me and are now upset that their financial power play backfired. Am I wrong for refusing to tear up a legal agreement that they insisted on? Should I be more flexible since they're Sarah's parents and Emma's grandparents? Update 1: The situation with Patricia and Robert has gotten much worse. I need to update everyone on what has happened since my original post. After I posted 3 weeks ago, Sarah tried to have several calm conversations with her parents. She called Patricia the day after I posted and explained that the prenup issue was causing unnecessary stress for everyone. Sarah suggested that we all take a break from discussing it and focus on maintaining good relationships for Emma's sake. Patricia agreed to drop the subject, but her behavior proved otherwise. Over the next week, she called Sarah every morning before work and every evening after dinner. The conversations always started with questions about Emma or innocent family topics, but Patricia would inevitably steer them toward my business success and how it was changing our family dynamic. Sarah started putting these calls on speaker so I could hear what Patricia was saying. Patricia would make comments about how my sudden wealth might be making me arrogant or disconnected from our original values. She would ask Sarah if I was still the same person she married or if success was going to my head. She repeatedly suggested that people with new money often became selfish and forgot about the people who helped them along the way. The most disturbing conversation happened on a Thursday evening 2 weeks ago. Patricia called while Sarah was giving Emma a bath, so I answered the phone. Patricia seemed surprised to hear my voice but quickly launched into what seemed like a prepared speech. She told me that she had been thinking about our argument and wanted to apologize for losing her temper. She said she and Robert had always wanted what was best for Sarah and that they recognized I had worked hard to build my business. However, she said they were concerned about the long-term effects of keeping our finances completely separate. Patricia explained that in healthy marriages, spouses shared everything because it demonstrated trust and partnership. She said the prenup might have made sense when we were young and uncertain about our futures, but now it was creating artificial boundaries that could damage our relationship over time. I told Patricia that Sarah and I were happy with our arrangement and that our finances were actually quite integrated despite the prenup. We had joint checking and savings accounts for household expenses and Emma's needs. The prenup only mattered for business assets and individual investments, which seemed reasonable for both of us. Patricia's tone changed immediately. She said I was being naive if I thought Sarah was truly happy living under the shadow of a legal document that treated her like a potential threat. She said Sarah was probably too polite to express her real feelings about being excluded from my business success. This conversation continued for nearly an hour. Patricia kept insisting that dissolving the prenup would strengthen our marriage and demonstrate my maturity as a husband and father. When I continued to decline, she said she was disappointed in my selfishness and that Robert had been right about my character from the beginning. The next day, Sarah received a text from Patricia asking her to lunch without me. Sarah agreed, thinking this might be an opportunity for her mother to move past the prenup issue. The lunch lasted 3 hours, and Sarah came home visibly shaken. Patricia had spent the entire lunch trying to convince Sarah that I was taking advantage of her financially and emotionally. She argued that the prenup proved I didn't trust Sarah and was already planning for our marriage to fail. She said successful men often abandon their wives once they achieved wealth, and the prenup was my way of making sure Sarah couldn't claim any of my assets when I left her for someone younger. Sarah told her mother that these accusations were ridiculous and hurtful. She explained that we had both agreed to sign the prenup and that it protected both of us equally. She also pointed out that I had been nothing but supportive of her own career and that we made all major decisions together. Patricia responded by saying that Sarah was being manipulated and couldn't see the situation clearly because she was too close to it. She said that as Sarah's mother, she had an obligation to protect her daughter from making mistakes that could ruin her future. She urged Sarah to consult with a divorce attorney, not to file for divorce, but to understand her legal position and options. When Sarah refused and said she wanted to end this conversation, Patricia became upset. She said Sarah was choosing a man who didn't respect her family over the parents who had always put her first. She accused Sarah of being ungrateful for everything they had provided and said she was worried about what kind of example we were setting for Emma. That evening, Sarah and I had our first real argument about this situation. She was exhausted from dealing with her parents' pressure and frustrated that I wasn't willing to compromise. She asked if signing a document to dissolve the prenup would really be such a terrible thing if it meant peace with her family. I explained that this wasn't about the prenup anymore. Patricia and Robert were trying to control our marriage and had shown that they would create drama whenever they didn't get their way. Giving in to their demands would only encourage more manipulation in the future. Sarah understood my point but said she was tired of being caught in the middle. The situation escalated last weekend when Patricia and Robert showed up at our house unannounced on Saturday morning. Emma was playing in the backyard, and Sarah was doing laundry. I was working in my home office when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to find both of them standing there with serious expressions. Robert was holding a manila envelope, and Patricia was carrying a gift bag for Emma. They walked past me into our living room without being invited in. Patricia called for Sarah, who came downstairs looking confused and annoyed. Patricia explained that they needed to have a family meeting to resolve this ongoing tension. She said the prenup issue was affecting everyone's relationships and needed to be settled immediately. Robert opened the manila envelope and pulled out several documents. He explained that they had consulted with their attorney about the best way to dissolve our prenuptial agreement. He said the process was simple and could be completed within a week if we all cooperated. Sarah asked why they had taken this step without discussing it with us first. Patricia replied that they were tired of going in circles and wanted to present us with a concrete solution. She said they had already paid their attorney's fees and just needed our signatures to move forward. I told them that we weren't interested in dissolving the prenup and that showing up with legal documents was inappropriate and disrespectful. Robert responded that I was being stubborn and that my refusal to cooperate was damaging Sarah's relationship with her family. The argument that followed was the worst we had ever had. Patricia accused me of being controlling and paranoid. Robert said I was trying to isolate Sarah from her family and that successful marriages required compromise and flexibility. They both insisted that the prenup was a symbol of distrust and that keeping it in place proved I didn't love Sarah enough to be vulnerable with her. Sarah defended me and our marriage, but she also expressed frustration with the ongoing conflict. She said she loved her parents and wanted them to be part of Emma's life, but their behavior was making that difficult. She asked them to respect our decision and stop pressuring us about our personal legal arrangements. Patricia's response shocked both Sarah and me. She said that if Sarah wasn't willing to protect herself and Emma from my financial manipulation, then she and Robert would have to consider more serious measures. When Sarah asked what that meant, Patricia said they might need to consult with a family attorney about Emma's best interests. The implication was clear. They were threatening to pursue grandparents' rights or some other legal action involving Emma if we didn't comply with their demands about the prenup. Sarah told them to leave immediately and said she would not tolerate threats involving our daughter. Since that confrontation, Patricia has been calling Sarah multiple times per day and sending long text messages that alternate between apologies and renewed pressure. Robert sent Sarah an email yesterday saying they were disappointed in her choices and worried about Emma growing up in a household with such poor communication and trust issues. Sarah has stopped answering their calls, but the constant messages are stressing her out. She's been having trouble sleeping and has been short-tempered with both Emma and me. I can see that this situation is taking a real toll on her, but I don't know how to make it better without giving in to her parents' unreasonable demands. The most frustrating part is that Patricia and Robert are framing this as being about our marriage and Emma's welfare, when it's clearly about their loss of control and financial influence. They never cared about the prenup when they thought it protected their money. Now that the tables have turned, they want to change the rules. I'm starting to think that there might not be a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Patricia and Robert have shown that they're willing to use manipulation, emotional blackmail, and even threats involving Emma to get their way. I'm not sure how much more of this Sarah can handle, and I'm worried about what they might do next. Update 2: I wish I could say things have gotten better, but Patricia and Robert have escalated their behavior in ways I didn't expect. The situation has become more serious, and I'm genuinely concerned about the impact on Sarah and Emma. After my last update, Sarah decided to try one more approach with her parents. She wrote them a long email explaining that their behavior was hurting our family and that she needed them to stop pressuring us about the prenup. She said she loved them and wanted them to be part of Emma's life, but they had to respect our decisions as adults and parents. Sarah's email was thoughtful and calm. She acknowledged that they had provided financial support during our early years and said we were grateful for their help. However, she explained that their current behavior was creating stress that was affecting her health and her relationship with Emma. She asked them to take a step back and give everyone some space to cool down. Patricia's response arrived 2 days later. It was a 10-page document that she had apparently worked on with Robert. The email started with expressions of love and concern for Sarah and Emma, but quickly turned into a detailed attack on my character and our marriage. Patricia claimed that she had been researching the psychological effects of prenuptial agreements on marriages. She included links to articles about how separate finances could create emotional distance between spouses and undermine trust. She argued that my insistence on keeping the prenup was evidence of commitment issues and potential narcissistic tendencies. The email also included a timeline of what Patricia called red flags in my behavior over the years. She listed instances where I had made decisions without consulting her and Robert, times when I had seemed distant at family gatherings, and occasions when I had prioritized work over family events. She interpreted all of these normal behaviors as signs that I was manipulative and controlling. The most disturbing part of Patricia's email was a section about Emma's future. She wrote that children from homes with financial secrecy and marital distrust often struggled with their own relationships as adults. She said she was worried that Emma was already showing signs of anxiety and behavioral problems because of the tension in our household. This claim about Emma was completely false. Our daughter is a happy, well-adjusted 4-year-old who loves school and has good friendships. Her teachers have never expressed any concerns about her behavior or emotional state. Patricia was either imagining problems that didn't exist or deliberately lying to support her argument. Sarah was devastated by this email. She had hoped that reaching out to her parents would open a door to better communication, but instead they had responded with a vicious personal attack on her husband and false claims about her child. She spent an entire evening crying after reading Patricia's message. I convinced Sarah to take a break from all communication with her parents. We blocked their phone numbers and email addresses temporarily, just to give ourselves some peace while we figured out our next steps. For about 2 weeks, things were much calmer in our house. Sarah started sleeping better, and we were able to focus on our normal routines with Emma. The peace ended when Patricia and Robert enlisted Sarah's Aunt Linda, 52F, to intervene on their behalf. Linda is Patricia's older sister and has always been close to Sarah. She called Sarah at work and said she was concerned about the family conflict and wanted to help mediate a solution. Sarah agreed to meet Linda for coffee, thinking that a neutral family member might be able to help resolve the situation. Linda seemed understanding at first and acknowledged that Patricia and Robert had handled things poorly. She said they were worried about Sarah and had probably let their concern override their judgment. However, Linda's true purpose became clear when she started asking detailed questions about our finances and the specific terms of our prenup. She wanted to know how much my business was worth, whether Sarah had any legal claim to my assets, and what would happen to Emma if Sarah and I divorced. Sarah realized that Linda wasn't there to mediate but to gather information for Patricia and Robert. When Sarah refused to discuss our private financial arrangements, Linda became pushy and said that family members should be transparent with each other about important matters. Linda then revealed that Patricia and Robert had been telling their extended family that I was financially abusing Sarah by keeping her locked out of my business assets. She said several relatives were concerned and wondered if Sarah needed help protecting herself and Emma. Sarah was horrified to learn that her parents had been spreading false information about our marriage to other family members. She told Linda that our finances were completely fine and that the prenup had been a mutual decision that protected both of us. She also said that creating family drama based on lies was unacceptable. Linda's response was disappointing but not surprising. She said that Patricia and Robert were just trying to protect their daughter and granddaughter. She suggested that Sarah should consider the possibility that she was too close to the situation to see it clearly. She also mentioned that if there were real problems in our marriage, family members would need to be prepared to help Sarah and Emma. After this conversation with Linda, Sarah decided we needed to take more decisive action. She was tired of being manipulated and having her family spread false information about our marriage. She wrote another email to Patricia and Robert, this time with a much firmer tone. Sarah's second email was direct and clear. She told her parents that their behavior had crossed several unacceptable lines. She said that lying to family members about our marriage, making false claims about Emma's well-being, and trying to manipulate relatives into pressuring us were all forms of emotional abuse that she would no longer tolerate. She gave them an ultimatum. They could apologize for their behavior, commit to treating our marriage with respect, and stop discussing our private financial arrangements with other people. If they were willing to do these things, we could work toward rebuilding our relationship over time. If they weren't willing to change their behavior, we would have to limit their contact with our family for everyone's well-being. Patricia and Robert's response came within hours. They were furious that Sarah had threatened to limit their access to Emma. Patricia called Sarah's ultimatum emotional blackmail and said that loving grandparents shouldn't be punished for caring about their family's welfare. Robert sent a separate message saying that Sarah had been brainwashed and was making decisions based on my influence rather than her own judgment. He said they would not apologize for trying to protect their daughter and granddaughter from a potentially harmful situation. Both messages made it clear that Patricia and Robert had no intention of changing their behavior or acknowledging that they had done anything wrong. They continued to frame their manipulation and lies as acts of love and protection. The final straw came last weekend when Patricia showed up at Emma's preschool during pickup time. She had apparently been waiting in the parking lot for Sarah to arrive. When Sarah got out of her car, Patricia approached her and said they needed to talk immediately. Patricia had brought a folder of documents that she claimed proved the harmful effects of prenuptial agreements on children. She insisted that Sarah look at the research while they sat in Sarah's car. When Sarah refused and said she was there to pick up Emma, Patricia became agitated. Patricia followed Sarah into the preschool and continued trying to show her the documents while other parents and teachers watched. She raised her voice and said that Sarah was making a mistake that would hurt Emma's future. The preschool director eventually had to ask Patricia to leave because she was disrupting the pickup process. Emma saw her grandmother acting strangely and became upset. She asked Sarah why Grandma Patricia was angry and whether she had done something wrong. Sarah had to reassure Emma that the adult conflict wasn't her fault while dealing with her own embarrassment and frustration. That evening, Sarah and I made the difficult decision to cut contact with Patricia and Robert completely. Their behavior had become unpredictable and was starting to affect Emma directly. We couldn't allow them to continue creating chaos in our lives and potentially traumatizing our daughter with their inappropriate actions. Sarah sent a final message to her parents explaining that we were ending communication because their behavior had become harmful to our family. She said we would reconsider contact in the future if they were willing to get professional help for their controlling behavior and make genuine changes to how they treated our marriage. We also contacted Emma's preschool to let them know that Patricia and Robert were not authorized to pick up Emma or visit her at school. The director was understanding and said they would make a note in Emma's file and inform all staff members about the restriction. It's been 2 weeks since we went no contact with Patricia and Robert. Sarah has been going through a grieving process as she accepts that her parents may not be safe people to have in our lives right now. She's sad about Emma losing her grandparents, but she's also relieved that the constant stress and manipulation have ended. I'm proud of how Sarah has handled this situation. She tried multiple approaches to maintain a relationship with her parents while protecting our marriage and daughter. When it became clear that Patricia and Robert were unwilling to respect basic boundaries, she made the difficult choice to prioritize our family's well-being. We're not sure what the future holds, but for now we're focusing on moving forward as a family of 3. Emma has adjusted well to not seeing her grandparents regularly, and the peace in our house has been worth the difficult decision to cut contact. Update 3: I'm writing what I hope will be my final update on this situation. The past 4 months have been challenging but ultimately positive for our family. Patricia and Robert's behavior has confirmed that we made the right decision to cut contact. The first month after going no contact was relatively quiet. Patricia sent a few text messages to Sarah's work email address, but they were mostly brief requests to talk. When Sarah didn't respond, the messages stopped. We thought maybe Patricia and Robert had accepted our decision and were giving us space. We were wrong. In month 2, they started a campaign of indirect contact through other family members. Sarah's cousin Jennifer, 29F, called to say that Patricia was worried sick about Sarah and Emma. Jennifer said Patricia had been crying at family gatherings and seemed genuinely distressed about the estrangement. Sarah explained to Jennifer that we had tried multiple times to resolve the conflict with her parents, but they had refused to respect reasonable boundaries. She said we weren't trying to punish anyone, but we needed to protect our family from ongoing manipulation and stress. Jennifer seemed to understand, but 2 weeks later Sarah's Uncle Tom, Patricia's brother, called with a similar message. Then Sarah's grandmother on Patricia's side reached out. It became clear that Patricia and Robert were systematically contacting relatives to pressure us into resuming contact. The most manipulative attempt came when Patricia sent Emma a birthday card 2 weeks before Emma's 5th birthday. The card contained a long handwritten note about how much Patricia missed Emma and wanted to be part of her life. Patricia included photos of herself and Robert with Emma from happier times and wrote about all the fun activities they used to do together. Sarah was furious that Patricia had tried to manipulate Emma's emotions to pressure us into contact. Emma asked why Grandma Patricia had sent her a card but wasn't coming to her birthday party. Sarah explained that sometimes adults have disagreements that make it hard for families to spend time together, but that it wasn't Emma's fault and she was loved by many people. We decided to have Emma's birthday party at a local indoor play center to avoid any possibility of Patricia and Robert showing up at our house. The party was wonderful, and Emma had a great time with her friends from school and neighbors from our street. 2 days after the party, Patricia and Robert showed up at Sarah's workplace. Sarah works in a small office building, and they waited in the lobby until she came down for lunch. When Sarah saw them, she tried to walk past without engaging, but Patricia blocked her path and said they needed to talk. Patricia had brought a large photo album filled with pictures of Sarah and Emma with her and Robert. She started flipping through the pages and talking about all the memories they had created together as a family. She said Emma needed her grandparents and that Sarah was being selfish by keeping them apart. Robert joined in by saying they had been patient long enough and that this separation was hurting everyone involved. He said they were willing to overlook Sarah's disrespectful behavior if she would agree to bring Emma for regular visits. He mentioned that they had consulted with an attorney about grandparents' rights and knew what options were available to them. Sarah told them that threatening legal action was exactly the kind of behavior that had led to the estrangement in the first place. She said their inability to respect boundaries was proof that they weren't safe people to have around Emma. She asked them to leave her workplace and said she would call building security if they didn't go voluntarily. Patricia became emotional and started crying in the lobby. She said Sarah was breaking her heart and that she didn't understand why her own daughter was being so cruel. Several of Sarah's co-workers witnessed this scene, which was embarrassing for Sarah and created additional stress at her job. After this incident, we decided to consult with a family law attorney about protective measures we might need to take. The attorney reviewed our situation and said that while Patricia and Robert hadn't done anything that would warrant a restraining order, we should document all their attempts at unwanted contact in case their behavior escalated further. The attorney also explained that grandparents' rights in our state are very limited when both parents are alive and married. Patricia and Robert would have almost no chance of getting court-ordered visitation unless they could prove that we were unfit parents, which clearly wasn't the case. This information gave us peace of mind, but we still took precautions. We installed security cameras around our house and informed Emma's school that her grandparents were not allowed any contact with her during school hours. We also asked our neighbors to let us know if they saw Patricia and Robert in our neighborhood. The third month brought a different strategy from Patricia and Robert. They stopped trying to contact us directly and instead began what I can only describe as a public relations campaign. They started posting frequently on social media about the importance of family relationships and the pain of being separated from beloved grandchildren. Patricia shared articles about parental alienation and the psychological damage caused when children are cut off from extended family. She posted old photos of herself with Emma along with captions about how much she missed her granddaughter. She never mentioned Sarah or me by name, but the implications were clear to anyone who knew our situation. Sarah found these posts hurtful and manipulative. Patricia was presenting herself as a victim and implying that we were harmful parents who were damaging Emma by keeping her from her grandparents. Several family friends reached out to Sarah to ask what was happening and whether everything was okay. The social media campaign culminated when Patricia posted a long message on Facebook about forgiveness and the importance of putting children's needs ahead of adult disagreements. She wrote about how much Emma had enriched her life and how heartbroken she was to be missing important milestones in Emma's development. This post received dozens of supportive comments from Patricia's friends and acquaintances, many of whom didn't know the full story of our conflict. Some people shared their own stories about family estrangements and encouraged Patricia to keep trying to reconcile with Sarah. A few comments suggested that Sarah was being unreasonable and should prioritize Emma's relationship with her grandparents. Sarah decided to respond publicly for the first and only time. She posted a brief message on her own Facebook page explaining that she had tried for months to maintain a relationship between Emma and her grandparents, but that certain boundaries needed to be respected to protect everyone's well-being. She said that she hoped someday reconciliation would be possible, but that it would require genuine changes in behavior and attitudes. Sarah's post was much more restrained than Patricia's dramatic messages, but it effectively communicated to our friends and family that we weren't the unreasonable parties in this conflict. Several people reached out privately to offer support and share their own experiences with difficult family relationships. The fourth month has been much quieter. Patricia's social media posts have decreased significantly, and we haven't had any direct contact attempts from either her or Robert. Sarah's extended family seems to have accepted that this is a serious estrangement rather than a temporary disagreement that will resolve itself quickly. Emma has adjusted well to the changes in our family structure. She occasionally asks about her grandparents, but she doesn't seem distressed by their absence. She has strong relationships with my parents, who visit regularly and have stepped up their involvement in her life. Sarah's cousin Jennifer has also maintained contact with us and sometimes brings her own children to play with Emma. Sarah has been seeing a counselor to help process the grief and guilt associated with cutting contact with her parents. The counselor has helped her understand that she made the right decision for her family and that she cannot control her parents' reactions or behavior. Sarah has also learned techniques for managing the stress and anxiety that sometimes arise when she thinks about the situation. My business continues to thrive, and ironically the prenup issue that started this whole conflict has become completely irrelevant to our daily lives. Sarah and I have never been stronger as a couple. We make financial decisions together, support each other's career goals, and are planning for our future as a team. The prenup exists on paper, but it doesn't affect how we actually live our lives or manage our relationship. We've also made the decision to have a second child. Sarah is now 3 months pregnant, and we're both excited about expanding our family. Emma is thrilled about becoming a big sister and has already started planning how she'll help take care of the baby. Patricia and Robert don't know about the pregnancy yet. We've discussed whether to inform them, but we've decided that we're not ready to open that door. If they were to learn about the pregnancy from other family members, we would deal with any contact attempts the same way we've handled their previous behavior. The situation has taught us valuable lessons about setting boundaries and protecting our family's well-being. Sarah has learned that loving someone doesn't mean accepting abusive or manipulative behavior from them. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove toxic people from your life, even when they're family members. We're not completely closed to the possibility of reconciliation with Patricia and Robert someday, but it would require genuine acknowledgement of their harmful behavior and real changes in how they approach relationships. Based on their actions over the past months, we're not optimistic that such changes will occur. For now, we're focused on building a healthy, happy life for ourselves and our children. We've surrounded Emma with people who love and support her unconditionally. She has 2 sets of loving great-grandparents, aunts and uncles who adore her, and family friends who have become like extended family to all of us. The drama and stress of the past year feel like distant memories now. Our house is peaceful, our marriage is strong, and Emma is thriving. We've learned that family isn't always about blood relationships, but about the people who choose to love and support you through both good times and challenges. I wanted to share this final update because I know some people might wonder whether we were too harsh in cutting contact with Patricia and Robert. Looking back, I'm confident we made the right decision for our family. Sometimes protecting the people you love most requires making difficult choices that others might not understand. Sarah and I are grateful for the support we've received from friends and family members who understood our situation and respected our decisions. We're also grateful for the perspective this experience has given us about what truly matters in life and relationships. The prenup that caused so much drama is still in place, and it will probably stay there indefinitely. Not because we don't trust each other, but because it's no longer worth the energy to change something that doesn't affect our actual relationship. Patricia and Robert's attempt to control our marriage through legal manipulation ultimately failed, and we've moved on to focus on more important things. Emma starts kindergarten in a few months, and we're looking forward to this new chapter in her life. She's confident, curious, and kind, everything we could hope for in a daughter. She's growing up in a home where her parents respect each other, communicate openly, and prioritize the family's well-being over outside pressures. That's really all I have to say about this situation. Patricia and Robert are no longer part of our daily lives, and we're all better off for it. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to stop participating in it altogether. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My mom cheated on her boyfriend with his brother. When I exposed her, she disowned me. Now she is harassing me for money. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I've been dealing with some intense family drama that's left me feeling conflicted and hurt. My mom, Lisa, 45F, has always been a complicated figure in my life. She and my dad, Tom, 47M, divorced when I was just 8 years old. It was a messy split, with lots of arguing and tension that I didn't fully understand at the time. Growing up, I always felt caught in the middle of my parents' conflicts. Even before the divorce, I have memories of them fighting late into the night, their raised voices carrying through the thin walls of our small house. My dad worked long hours as a construction manager, often coming home tired and irritable. My mom, who was a stay-at-home parent at the time, would complain about feeling isolated and unappreciated. I remember one particular night when I was about 6 years old. I had woken up to use the bathroom and overheard my parents in a heated argument. My mom was crying, accusing my dad of not caring about her or our family. My dad's voice was low and angry, saying something about financial stress and feeling suffocated. I sat at the top of the stairs, clutching my stuffed rabbit, too scared to go back to my room. That image of my parents as adversaries rather than a united front stuck with me for years. After the divorce, I lived primarily with my mom. She did her best to provide for me, going back to school to become a nurse and working long hours to keep us afloat financially. But emotionally, things were often strained between us. Lisa had a tendency to be moody and unpredictable. Some days she'd be loving and attentive, other days she'd snap at me over small things or give me the silent treatment. As a kid, I never knew which version of my mom I'd be dealing with on any given day. I remember one time when I was about 10, I had a big school project due. I needed poster board and some other supplies, but I was afraid to ask my mom for money because she had been in a bad mood all week. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, she exploded, yelling about how I always waited until the last minute and how she couldn't afford to keep buying things for my stupid projects. I ended up using an old cardboard box and some markers we had around the house. My project looked terrible compared to my classmates, and I was embarrassed to present it. That incident really stuck with me, making me hesitant to ask for help or express my needs. My relationship with my dad remained positive, even though I only saw him every other weekend. Tom was always patient and kind with me, making our limited time together special. He'd take me to the park, help with my homework, or just sit and talk with me about my life. I looked forward to those weekends as an escape from the tension at home with Mom. One of my favorite memories with my dad was from when I was about 12. He took me camping for the first time. We spent the whole weekend hiking, fishing, and sitting around the campfire. It was during that trip that I really opened up to him about how hard things were at home with Mom. He listened without judgment, offering comfort and advice. That weekend was a turning point in our relationship, cementing my dad as a source of stability in my often chaotic life. As I got older, the issues with my mom intensified. When I was around 14, Lisa started dating again. She went through a string of boyfriends, some of whom made me uncomfortable. There was one guy, Steve, who would make inappropriate comments about my appearance or try to walk in on me changing. When I told my mom about it, she accused me of being dramatic and trying to sabotage her happiness. That incident created a huge rift between us. I remember feeling so betrayed and alone during that time. I started spending more time at friends' houses, avoiding being home as much as possible. I threw myself into schoolwork and extracurricular activities, anything to keep busy and out of the house. My grades improved, but my relationship with my mom deteriorated further. Throughout high school, Lisa and I fought constantly. She'd criticize my friends, my clothes, my grades. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Meanwhile, she was out partying most weekends, often coming home drunk and berating me for being boring and prudish because I focused on my studies instead of going out. There were times I seriously considered asking to live with my dad full-time, but I worried about abandoning my mom when she clearly had issues. I recall one particularly bad fight during my junior year. I had been invited to a sleepover at my best friend's house, but my mom refused to let me go. She said I needed to stay home and help her clean the house for a date she was having over. When I protested, pointing out that she had sprung this on me last minute, she flew into a rage. She called me selfish and ungrateful, saying I was just like my father, always putting myself first. In the heat of the moment, she slapped me across the face. It was the first and only time she ever hit me, but it marked a turning point in our relationship. After that, I stopped trying to please her or gain her approval. I just focused on getting through high school so I could leave. Things came to a head during my senior year of high school. Lisa had been dating a guy named Mark, 38M, for about 6 months. He seemed nice enough, and my mom appeared happier than she had in years. Mark was a successful real estate agent, and he often took my mom out to fancy restaurants or weekend getaways. For once, she wasn't constantly complaining about money or feeling stuck. I was cautiously optimistic that maybe things were looking up. But then I discovered something that would blow up our entire family. One day after school, I came home early because I wasn't feeling well. As I walked in the front door, I heard noises coming from my mom's bedroom. Thinking she might be homesick too, I went to check on her. What I saw when I opened the door horrified me. My mom was in bed with Mark's brother, Paul, 35M. I was frozen in shock. Lisa jumped up, wrapping herself in a sheet and screaming at me to get out. I ran to my room and locked the door, my mind reeling. I couldn't believe my mom would cheat on Mark, especially with his own brother. It made me sick. For the next few days, there was intense tension in our house. My mom alternated between ignoring me completely and snapping at me angrily. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Mark? Should I pretend I hadn't seen anything? The weight of the secret was crushing me. I remember lying awake at night, replaying the scene in my mind and feeling sick to my stomach. I thought about all the times my mom had accused my dad of cheating during their marriage, which, as far as I knew, he never had. The hypocrisy was staggering. I also couldn't help but think about Mark, who had always been kind to me and seemed to genuinely care for my mom. The thought of him being betrayed like this made me angry on his behalf. Finally, about a week after the incident, I broke down and called my dad. I told him everything, sobbing as I recounted what I'd seen. Tom was furious on my behalf. He said I shouldn't have to carry this burden and that Mark deserved to know the truth. With my dad's encouragement, I decided to tell Mark what had happened. The fallout was explosive. I called Mark and asked to meet him in person. When I told him what I'd witnessed, he was devastated. He confronted my mom, who initially tried to deny everything. But when Mark said he was going to ask Paul directly, Lisa finally admitted to the affair. Mark broke up with her on the spot. My mom was livid. She screamed at me, calling me a traitor and saying I'd ruined her life. She told me to get out and never come back. Through my tears, I packed a bag and went to stay with my dad. Lisa texted me later that night saying I was dead to her and she never wanted to see me again. For the next few months, I lived with my dad full time. He was incredibly supportive, helping me work through my hurt and anger in the aftermath of everything. I finished out my senior year and was accepted to a college about 2 hours away. As difficult as things had been, I was looking forward to a fresh start. The day I left for college, my mom showed up at my dad's house unexpectedly. She begged me not to go, saying she was sorry and that she needed me. But after everything that had happened, I couldn't bring myself to forgive her so easily. I told her I needed space and left for school with a heavy heart. That was 4 years ago. In that time, I've had minimal contact with my mom. She's reached out periodically, usually when she's going through a rough patch and wants support. But I've maintained firm boundaries, not letting myself get sucked back into her drama. College has been a time of healing and growth for me. I've made wonderful friends, excelled in my studies, and even started seeing a therapist to work through some of my family issues. I've also grown closer to my dad, who has become a rock of support in my life. Recently though, things have shifted. My mom has been persistently trying to reconnect, saying she's changed and wants to make amends. She's been sending long emails and leaving tearful voicemails. Part of me wants to believe her, to have my mom back in my life. But I'm scared of getting hurt again. I don't know if I can ever fully trust her after everything that's happened. So that's where things stand now. I'm torn between protecting myself and potentially giving my mom another chance. Am I wrong for being hesitant to let her back in? Should I try to forgive and move forward? Or maintain the distance I've established? I could really use some outside perspective on this complicated situation. Update 1. It's been about a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone who took the time to offer advice and share their own experiences. Your insights really helped me gain some clarity on the situation with my mom. After much consideration, I decided to meet up with my mom in person. We agreed to have lunch at a neutral location, a small cafe in my college town. I was incredibly nervous leading up to it, unsure of what to expect. The days leading up to our meeting were filled with anxiety. I found myself constantly replaying memories from my childhood, both good and bad. I remembered the rare good times, like when my mom took a day off work to nurse me through a bad case of the flu, or when she stayed up all night helping me finish a school project I had procrastinated on. But I also couldn't forget the countless disappointments and hurtful moments that had characterized so much of our relationship. The night before our meetup, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, imagining all the possible ways the conversation could go. Part of me was hopeful that this could be a turning point, a chance to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. But another part of me was terrified of being hurt again, of letting my guard down only to have my mom revert to her old patterns of behavior. When I saw my mom, Lisa, I was struck by how much older she looked. The past 4 years had clearly taken a toll on her. Her hair, which she had always meticulously dyed and styled, was showing streaks of gray. There were new lines around her eyes and mouth, and she seemed to have lost weight. She broke down crying almost immediately, telling me how sorry she was for everything and how much she had missed me. It was uncomfortable and emotionally draining, to say the least. We talked for nearly 3 hours. Lisa told me she had been in therapy for the past year, working on her issues with relationships and impulsivity. She said she realized how toxic her behavior had been and how unfairly she had treated me growing up. She also revealed that she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which explained some of her erratic moods and poor decision-making. As she spoke, I found myself remembering specific incidents from my childhood that suddenly made more sense in light of this diagnosis. The times when she would stay up for days, manically cleaning the house or starting new projects. The periods of deep depression when she would barely get out of bed. The impulsive decisions, like the time she spent our rent money on a shopping spree or when she quit her job without having another one lined up. Lisa went on to explain that she had been on medication for her bipolar disorder for about 6 months now, and it had made a significant difference in stabilizing her moods. She talked about the coping mechanisms she had learned in therapy and how she was working on taking responsibility for her actions instead of blaming others. While part of me wanted to believe her, I couldn't shake my skepticism. I've seen my mom go through phases of claiming to change before, only to revert to her old ways. I told her honestly that while I appreciated her apology, I wasn't ready to jump back into a close relationship. I suggested we take things very slowly, maybe starting with occasional phone calls or meetups. Lisa seemed disappointed but said she understood. She gave me a letter she had written, asking me to read it when I felt ready. I haven't opened it yet, I'm still processing everything from our meeting. After lunch, I called my dad to fill him in. Tom was supportive of my decision to meet Lisa but cautioned me to be careful. He reminded me that I don't owe my mom anything and that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. My dad shared that he had suspected Lisa might have had bipolar disorder during their marriage, but she had always refused to seek help. He expressed hope that she was genuinely getting treatment now, but also warned me not to get my hopes up too high. In the weeks since our meetup, Lisa has respected my boundaries for the most part. She texts occasionally but doesn't push when I take a while to respond. It's a delicate balance. I'm trying to be open to the possibility of reconciliation while also protecting myself emotionally. One unexpected development is that this situation has brought me closer to my half-sister, Amy, 15F. She's Lisa's daughter from a brief relationship a few years after her divorce from my dad. Amy and I were never super close growing up due to the age gap, but she reached out to me recently. Apparently, Lisa has been leaning on Amy pretty heavily, putting her in an uncomfortable position. Amy confided that she feels trapped between wanting to support our mom and feeling overwhelmed by her neediness. She told me about instances where Lisa would call her in the middle of the night, crying and asking Amy to come over. Or times when Lisa would forget to pick Amy up from school because she was in a depressive episode. Hearing Amy's experiences brought up a lot of memories for me. I remembered feeling similarly trapped and overwhelmed when I was her age, constantly walking on eggshells around my mom's moods. I've been trying to be there for Amy as much as I can, offering a listening ear and advice when asked. I've also encouraged her to talk to a school counselor or therapist if she feels comfortable doing so. This situation with Amy has made me reflect on my own role as an older sister. When Amy was born, I was already dealing with so much tension at home that I never really bonded with her. Now, I'm realizing that she might need my support more than ever. We've started having regular video chats, and I'm trying to be the supportive big sister I wish I'd had at her age. So that's where things stand currently. I'm cautiously optimistic but still very wary. My plan is to continue taking things slowly with Lisa, maintaining firm boundaries, and seeing if her changed behavior is sustained over time. I'm also focusing on strengthening my relationship with Amy and being a source of stability for her. I'm still grappling with a lot of conflicting emotions, hope, fear, resentment, longing. Part of me wants to believe that my mom has truly changed and that we could have the relationship I've always wanted. But another part of me is afraid of being disappointed again, of opening myself up only to be hurt. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm continuing with my own therapy, which has been incredibly helpful in processing all of this. I'm also leaning on my support system, my dad, my friends, and now Amy. I'll update again if there are any major developments. Thanks again to everyone who has offered support and advice through this complicated situation. Your words have meant more than you know. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and unfortunately, things have taken a turn for the worse. I wanted to share what's been going on and get some advice on how to proceed. For a while, things were going relatively smoothly with my mom, Lisa. We were having semi-regular phone calls and had even met up for coffee a couple of times. She seemed to be respecting my boundaries and working on herself. I started to feel cautiously optimistic about rebuilding our relationship. During this time, Lisa shared more about her bipolar disorder diagnosis and treatment. She talked about the medication she was on and how it was helping stabilize her moods. She also told me about the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques she was learning to manage her emotions better. I was impressed by her apparent commitment to her mental health and felt hopeful that this time might be different. However, about a month ago, Lisa lost her job. She had been working as a nurse at a local hospital but was fired for repeated tardiness and unprofessional behavior. When she called to tell me, she was hysterical, blaming everyone but herself for the situation. It was like a switch had flipped, and suddenly she was back to her old patterns of behavior. As Lisa recounted the events leading to her firing, I started to see cracks in the story she had been telling me about her recovery. She admitted that she had stopped taking her medication regularly because she didn't like how it made her feel. She had also stopped attending therapy sessions, claiming she didn't have time due to her work schedule. Since then, Lisa has been constantly calling and texting me, often late at night or early in the morning. She's been asking for money, saying she can't make rent and might become homeless. When I've gently suggested she look into unemployment benefits or job training programs, she gets angry and accuses me of not caring about her. The situation came to a head last week when Lisa showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was shocked to see her. She lives over 2 hours away and I had never given her my address. Apparently, she had guilted my sister Amy into telling her where I lived. Lisa was clearly drunk when she arrived. She started screaming at me in the hallway, saying I was a terrible daughter for abandoning her in her time of need. My neighbors came out to see what the commotion was about, and I was mortified. I finally managed to calm Lisa down enough to get her inside, where she promptly passed out on my couch. The next morning, Lisa acted like nothing had happened. She tried to make small talk over coffee as if she hadn't just shown up drunk and caused a scene. When I tried to address the incident, she brushed it off and changed the subject. She ended up staying for 3 days, during which time she ransacked my apartment looking for money or valuables while I was at work. I finally reached my breaking point and told Lisa she needed to leave. She threw another tantrum, calling me selfish and ungrateful. As she was storming out, she knocked over a shelf, breaking several framed photos and keepsakes. I was left feeling drained, angry, and incredibly disappointed. Since then, I've blocked Lisa's number and on all social media. I feel guilty, but I just can't deal with the chaos she brings into my life. I'm worried about my sister Amy, who is still living with Lisa full-time. I've told Amy she can always come stay with me if things get bad at home. I also found out that Lisa has been bad-mouthing me to our extended family, telling them I've abandoned her in her time of need. Some relatives have been reaching out, pressuring me to help my mom. It's frustrating because they don't know the full story. This whole situation has brought up a lot of painful memories from my childhood. I'm reminded of all the times Lisa would promise to change, only to fall back into her old patterns. I'm feeling a mix of anger, disappointment, and grief, mourning the mother I wish I had and the relationship we'll probably never have. I've been talking to my therapist about all of this, trying to process my feelings and figure out how to move forward. She's been helping me work on setting and maintaining healthy boundaries, which has been challenging but necessary. At this point, I feel like I've reached the end of my rope. I want to maintain no contact with Lisa, but I'm worried about the potential fallout with other family members. I'm also concerned about Amy's well-being. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some significant developments in my family situation. Shortly after my last post, things with my mom, Lisa, hit rock bottom. She continued to harass me despite my attempts to go no contact, even showing up at my workplace once. I had to involve campus security to escort her off the premises, which was humiliating and stressful. The incident left me shaken and afraid to go to work for weeks afterward. The final straw came when Lisa somehow got access to my bank account and withdrew a significant amount of money. I suspect she may have stolen some of my personal documents during her stay at my apartment. I immediately froze my accounts and filed a police report, but it was devastating to have to take legal action against my own mother. In the midst of this chaos, my sister Amy reached out to me in desperation. Lisa's behavior had become increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous. Amy confided that Lisa had been drinking heavily and bringing strange men home. She didn't feel safe in the house anymore. Amy described nights where she would barricade herself in her room, terrified of the shouting and crashing sounds coming from downstairs. After a lot of discussion with my dad and consultation with a family lawyer, we decided to petition for emergency custody of Amy. It was a difficult and emotional process, but ultimately successful. The court hearing was one of the most stressful experiences of my life. Lisa showed up drunk and caused a scene, which ironically probably helped our case. Amy has been living with my dad for the past 4 months, and the change in her demeanor is remarkable. She's doing better in school and seems much happier overall. As for Lisa, she didn't take the loss of custody well. She's been in and out of rehab, but doesn't seem committed to making real changes. The last I heard, she had moved in with a new boyfriend and was talking about relocating to another state. Part of me hopes she does move away, as it might finally give us all some peace. On a more positive note, this ordeal has brought me much closer to my dad and Amy. We've formed a tight-knit support system, and I'm grateful for their presence in my life. I've been spending more weekends at my dad's house, helping Amy adjust to her new living situation and just enjoying family time. It's bittersweet. I'm happy we're all closer now, but sad about the circumstances that brought us together. I've maintained my no-contact stance with Lisa, which hasn't been easy but feels necessary for my mental health. Some family members still don't understand and continue to pressure me to reconcile, but I'm standing firm in my decision. I've had to distance myself from a few particularly pushy relatives, which has been painful but ultimately for the best. Looking back on everything that's happened over the past year, I feel a mix of sadness, anger, and relief. While I mourn the relationship I wish I could have had with my mom, I'm also proud of myself for setting boundaries and prioritizing my well-being. It's been a long, difficult journey, but I finally feel like I'm on a path towards healing and stability. Moving forward, my focus is on healing, supporting Amy through this transition, and building positive relationships with the family members who respect my choices. It's not the outcome I would have chosen, but I'm hopeful for a brighter, more stable future.